You probably should fire your marketing team if what I say in the next few minutes sounds familiar. And I don't mean fire them because they're lazy. I mean, fire them because they're active and busy and hitting their KPIs, and you are living in a state of blind satisfaction while the foundation for your brand quietly rots. Here's the scenario. You're a founder. You look back at the last 12 months and you see motion. Q1 was the rebrand. New logo, new front, new energy. Everyone felt fresh. Q2 was the viral push. You hired a hot agency for a UGC blitz. Impressions went through the roof and the board deck looked incredible. Q3 was the podcast launch because podcasts are the thing, right? You got the mics, booked 3 guests, released 6 episodes, and now it's Q4 and the team is pitching a TikTok strategy because the attention has moved and you have to go where the attention is. On paper, this is a hard-working marketing team. They're not sitting around. They're deploying tactics, and if you're a founder who does not live in the marketing weeds, you might look at that list and think you're doing the work. But here is the only question that matters. What is left? The rebrand is a PDF. The UGC Blitz is a memory and an invoice. The podcast is a graveyard of episodes no one listens to, hosted on the platform that you're still paying for. The TikTok strategy will join them in the landfill by Q1 when the algorithm shifts again. You have been operating on your brand for 18 months, and if you stopped all activity tomorrow, you would wake up with 0 momentum, 0 stored energy, and 0 muscle. That is not a marketing team. That is a surgical theater. And you are the patient under anesthesia, smiling through a haze of impressions and engagement rates while they remove tissue that grows right back next quarter. Here's what nobody tells you before you go under. Surgery feels like the smartest decision in the room. It is fast, it is visible, and it has clear before and after. The surgeon shows you the scans, explains the procedure, quotes the recovery time. It feels decisive. It feels like transformation. That is exactly what makes it dangerous. It produces the feeling of progress without the structure of progress. And by the time you realize nothing has fundamentally changed, you're already being wheeled into the operating room for the next procedure. The fix is not a better tactic. It is understanding the difference between a body that gets operated on and a body that gets trained. Now let's leave marketing for a while and go to the gym. If you want to change your body, you have 2 paths. Path 1 is surgery. Liposuction. You go under, you wake up, and the fat is, poof, gone. The before and after is dramatic. It feels like the fastest, most efficient route to transformation. Path 2 is the gym, specifically leg day. You would hardly find anyone post an Instagram story celebrating leg day. Leg day is the session you dread because for the next 48 to 72 hours, you'll be walking down the stairs sideways like a crab who just received terrible news. You brace yourself against the wall to sit on a toilet. It's not glamorous. The changes are invisible for months. No one stops you on the street to say you look different. But leg day is doing something surgery cannot. It is changing the underlying architecture. Every session sends a signal to the body that says adapt, build, become capable of more than you currently are. The signal accumulates quietly and invisibly until one day around the 6 months mark and someone asks you what you have been doing differently. And then you realize you're not just lighter, you're structurally different. Your metabolism runs hotter and your recovery is faster. You have become a different machine. Surgery cannot produce that result. The change from surgery is real, but the foundation is untouched. Your metabolic rate has not shifted, your cardiovascular capacity has not improved, and your ability to carry groceries up 3 flights without getting winded is identical to before. You look different on the surface, but the system underneath is the same system. And because the system is the same, the results are fragile. Without behavioral change, the body reverts. The gym result is slower, uglier, and more painful to earn, but once the machine is rewired, it stays rewired. Now, let's bring it back to marketing. Your Q1 brand was technically liposuction. Your Q2 viral push was a steroid cycle, a spike in reach followed by a crash back to baseline because the algorithm gave you attention you had not organically earned and then recalibrated against you. Your Q3 podcast was a supplement stack, something added on top of a system that was not working, hoping the addition will fix what the foundation could not support. None of it was training. None of it was building a body that gets stronger with every rep. And the cruelest part is that it felt like motion the entire time. The numbers moved, the team got excited, the founder felt momentum, but momentum is borrowed. Muscle is built. The moment the tactics stopped, everything it generated stopped with it. You're not getting stronger, you're getting lighter temporarily, and then wondering why the weight keeps coming back. The principle that separates the gym from the operating table is called progressive overload. The body only adapts when it is consistently challenged beyond its current capacity. So you do not lift the same weight forever and expect to grow. Every session you add a little more weight, a little more volume, a little more tension on the muscle, and the body responds by building exactly what it needed to handle the additional demand. The adaptation is invisible in any single session, but over 90 days, over 180 days, it becomes visible. It is permanent because it is structural, not surface, and your marketing needs the same principle. Each effort should add to the last. Showing up today should make tomorrow's showing up more effective. The work you do now should still be paying returns months from now without relaunching it or repackaging it or running ads to keep it alive. That is what IdevaLab built the culture triangle to do. 3 forces, identity, content, and community, that when developed together create a compounding system that gets stronger the longer you run it. Not 3 departments that vaguely coexist, 3 forces that load each other, and the order in which you build them does matter. Identity, your point of view, is the weight you train towards. A lot of brands do not have an identity, they have a positioning statement. And the difference between those 2 things is the difference between surgery and the gym. A positioning statement is engineered to include as many potential customers as possible without alienating anyone. It is optimized for reach, which sounds smart until you realize that a brand trying to speak to everyone speaks to no one with any depth. For example, we help busy professionals stay fit with flexible, time-efficient workout programs. It's clear and inclusive, but generic enough that almost any fitness brand could say it. It tells you what the brand does, not what it believes. Depth is what creates affinity, and affinity is what compounds. Identity, on the other hand, is what your brand believes so clearly and so consistently that it shapes how you show up everywhere. It's your point of view made structural, not an opinion you hold privately, but a standard you set publicly that everything else you build has to hold up against. So instead of trying to appeal to everyone, a brand might say, we believe most people are not struggling with fitness because they lack discipline, but because the industry is built for people with too much time. Fitness should fit into your life, not compete with it. When your identity is clear, the right people feel seen by it, and the wrong people naturally just filter themselves out. In some cases, that clarity may challenge assumptions or make certain people uncomfortable, not because you're trying to provoke, but because you're choosing to stand for something specific instead of trying to accommodate everyone. The gym lifer understands this instinctively. They do not just use the gym, they identify as someone who trains. The gym is an expression of who they are, not a service they subscribe to. That is identity creating retention without a single tactic. No ad, no campaign, no reactivation sequence. Just a person who has built their self-concept around something real. Your brand needs to produce that same feeling in the right people, and it cannot do that by being inoffensive. So here's how to start. Take the next piece of content your team planned about a product feature and replace it with one that answers this question. Honestly, what is the one thing that everyone in your industry believes that you know is wrong? If you sell productivity tools, for example, do not talk about sync across devices. Talk about why Inbox Zero is a performative anxiety ritual that has never actually made anyone more money. If you're a fitness brand, do not lead with new formula. Lead with why the supplements industry sells the feeling of progress instead of actual progress. And when you publish that, some people might unfollow you. Some will push back in the comments. That's not a failure. That is the weight being added to the bar. The people who stay have just had their trust in you overloaded in the best possible way. That trust does not disappear when your ad budget runs out. It just compounds. A second practical step is to audit your last 30 pieces of content and ask a simple question about each one. Could any other brand in your space have posted this? If the answer is yes, it's not identity, it is filler. Identity is specific enough that removing your name from it would make it feel incomplete. Start replacing the filler with content that only you could have made. Identity is the training program. It is the weight you're always training towards. Everything built on top of it, every piece of content, every community conversation has to be strong enough to hold that standard up. If identity is the training program, content is the daily rep, not the viral post, not the 6 weeks production campaign, the daily rep. Most brands treat content like advertising. Every piece needs to convert. Every video needs to go viral. Every email needs a 40% open rate or it was not worth sending. That is a surgical mindset applied to content, looking for the one injection that changes everything. Real content strategy is training. You show up, you say something true and useful, and then you do it again the next day and the day after that. Not because each individual rep is spectacular, but the accumulation becomes the asset. Here is the practical difference. A post writing a trending meme dies in 6 hours. A detailed breakdown of how you solved a specific problem your audience faces every day gets discovered on a search engine 2 years from now by someone lying awake at 2 in the morning anxious about exactly that problem. They read it and they feel like you wrote it specifically for them and they could just mail you the next morning. They could also share it without being asked. That one piece of content will do more compounding work than 6 months of trend chasing. So to start building content that compounds, apply one filter before publishing anything. Ask whether this will be useful to the same person 14 months from now. If the answer is no, you're creating a tactic dressed as content. If the answer is yes, you're laying down a rep that builds the library. One piece a week that passes that filter will outperform 5 pieces a day that do not. A second shift is to stop treating your older content as dead. A lot of brands publish content and then just abandon them. So go back to your last 12 months of content and identify the 3 pieces that receive the most genuine engagement. Not likes, but replies, shares, and direct messages. Those are the pieces that have structural weight. Build on them. Write the follow-up. Record the deeper version. Reference them in new content. A body of work is not a collection of disconnected posts. It is a system where older pieces makes newer pieces stronger. Content without identity is noise. It is posting for the sake of posting. It is chasing engagement without building anything that lasts. Identity is what gives your content a spine. Content is what makes your identity visible to people who have not found you yet. So moving on to community. This is the corner most brands treat as a reward, something you build once you're big enough to afford the community manager and the event budget and the private Slack workspace. That thinking is backwards in the most expensive way possible. Community is not the reward for building a great brand. Community is how the brand gets built. It's the living proof that your identity is resonant. It's the mechanism that turns your content from post into culture. And it's the only marketing assets that generates itself. Go back to the gym. The gym you actually show up to consistently, not the one you sign up for online. There are regulars, people who know your name and notice when you have not been in for a week. That sense of being expected, being seen, is not a nice feature of the experience. It's the primary reason that a lot of people keep going when the motivation is not there. The community holds you accountable without anyone asking for accountability. You show up because the environment expects you. A brand community works identically. When your audience shares a language, shared values, and shared reference points, they hold each other in the orbit of your brand without you manufacturing reasons to keep them there. They recommend you without being asked. They defend you when someone criticizes you publicly. They create content about you. They become an extension of your marketing operation that requires no contracts, no retainer, and no campaign to activate it. The first step to building this is to stop measuring community by size and start measuring it by depth. 100 people who reply your emails, show up to your events, and talk about you to their network is a more powerful compounding asset than 10,000 followers who just scroll past your content. This week, identify the 20 people who engage with you consistently across any channel. Email them personally, not with a pitch, with a question about what they are working on or struggling with. That conversation is the seed of belonging. It costs nothing and it cannot be replicated by any tactic you could run against a cold audience. The second step is to create a space, however small, where your audience can encounter each other. A monthly call, a private newsletter where you share things you do not publish publicly, a community channel. The format is less important than the intention. The intention is to give people who believe what you believe a place to find each other. When they do, you stop being a brand they follow and start being a community they belong to. And belonging is the one thing in marketing that no competitor can copy and no algorithm can take away. When your identity is sharp, your content has direction. When your content is consistent, it attracts people who resonate with what you stand for. When those people find each other, community forms, and when community forms, it reinforces your identity because you're no longer a brand telling people who you are. You're a collective of people living it out in public. Each corner loads the other two. The system generates its own energy, and that is when compounding stops being a metaphor and starts showing up in your number. Tactics are not the enemy. Ads have a place. A well-timed campaign can amplify what you have already built. A viral moment landing on a brand with real infrastructure underneath it can accelerate years of compounding in a single week. That is tactics working the way they're supposed to, as fuel, not as foundation. The problem is tactics as strategy. Running ads because you do not have content. Launching campaigns because you do not have community. Rebranding because you do not have identity and a new logo feels like having one. That is not building. That is buying time. And the real cost is not the spend. It is the compounding you're not doing while you are on the operating table. Every quarter spent chasing tactics is a quarter you could have been laying down reps, sharpening your point of view, growing belonging, building a body of work that works while you sleep. Time in the gym is never wasted. Time in the operating room, repeated endlessly, just leaves more scars and the same underlying condition. So before the next ad, ask what you are driving people to that will keep working after the ad stops. If the answer is a landing page that will be archived in 6 months, build the thing worth advertising first. Before chasing the next trend, ask whether it reflects what you actually believe or whether you're borrowing someone else's momentum for a quarter. Before the next campaign, ask whether it connects to something permanent. If it does not, make it connect or do not make it at all. Then, build the triangle. Get clear on your identity. Say the thing that your industry is too cautious to say. Make it specific enough that the wrong people opt out and the right people feel found. Build your content like you're training, not performing. One piece a week that will be useful in 14 months beats 5 posts a day that will be forgotten by Friday. Invest in community before it is comfortable, before you feel big enough. The belonging does not come after the brand is built. The belonging is how the brand gets built. And then be patient. Be patient the way only people who understand compounding can be patient, not passive. Actively patient, adding weights to the bar every single week. Because the brands that compound are not the ones that ran the hardest for 90 days. They're the ones that fell in love with the process. The ones who stopped waiting to arrive and started treating the training itself as the destination. There's no surgery that builds the brand and lets you coast. The practice is the point. So stop letting your team operate on you while you're under anesthesia. Wake up, fire the surgeons, and go do some leg day, even if it means walking sideways for a while. It's been great talking to you today, and you can visit the IDEVA website at idevalab.com. That's IDEVA lab.com. Book a time, and we're happy to just have a conversation. See you in the next one.